My name is Shelley Giustiliano. I'm a constituent of District 6 here in Madison, and I am also a proud alumnus of the University of Wisconsin here in Madison, 1991, with an advanced degree in psychology. What happens in this city, excuse me, and within this university matters very much to me. I hope that what the UW is saying is true. Up until now, I never really doubted it. It's not often that I am involved in community politics, but this is one of those issues that seems fundamentally important to me. It seems important to us as a community and potentially as a nation, since other cities in other states may look at this movement as a precedent in how a community can and should be involved in the ways that research animals are treated, before, during, and after the experiments are concluded. First, let me say that I am not against animal research. I certainly can appreciate the value of it, and I have probably benefited from it many times myself. At last week's meeting, there were quite a few references to primates being used in AIDS research. Some people maintained that there was no way to get significant results from primate research in this area, while someone else in the room stressed that his life may literally depend on a cure that could come from said research. I have a close friend who has AIDS. I too look forward to the day that there is a cure. I think I'm safe in saying that it matters to us all. So using AIDS research as the highly valued bar against which primate research is measured, I feel it comes down to this: do the research that is necessary, but allow for the independent, external review that would come from the development of the advisory panel that's proposed in Resolution 35. I think that many people would agree that AIDS research is important. To me, it seems to reside toward one end of a critical spectrum. At the other end of that spectrum are studies such as this one, also conducted here at UW-Madison. Does a mother's, and I'm summarizing very crudely because I'm not a scientist, does a mother's stress affect how she is toward her babies? Really? I am in the social service field, and there is no doubt about the link between a mother's stress levels, the levels of cortisol in her body, in her veins, and the effect that may have on her maternal behaviors. But in order to prove this, pregnant monkeys were placed into a pitch-black room repeatedly where they were terrorized by a foghorn for hours on end. To deliberately subject creatures to pain and terror to illustrate something that is already well established is just one example of research that would be examined. Thank you. If our university chooses to conduct primate research, then there should be the corresponding responsibility to screen the research, not to, quote, vet the proposals to make them perfect on paper, as was explained to us last week by a university employee, but to make it right. Part of making it right would be permitting and even encouraging the points set forth in Resolution 35. I work for state government in a department that is also often very controversial, often in the news, often criticized. I know that lack of transparency in any agency or business is a sure way to create more suspicion, more distrust, and more resentment. If there is nothing to hide, there should be an open door. Agencies cannot always internally evaluate themselves. Things become personal and the objectivity gets compromised. It's just that simple.
We need an advisory panel to evaluate whether the research conducted on primates is ethical. In her letter to the board, Chancellor Martin stated that AIDS research, in her opinion, she could think of nothing more ethical than saving and improving human life on such a scale. Yet there have been 85 vaccine tests that have failed after first being tested on chimpanzees. We need to know how the current primate research is any different from the chimpanzee research. We need to know the developments that have been made towards the AIDS vaccine now. The advisory panel could look into a way to make these advances readily available and in layman's terms so that the public can see the benefits of the ethical research.
Those who commit vivisection to the monkeys claim that what they are doing is ethical because it is to make humanity better. So how can humanity be better whenever it intentionally abuses, tortures, and commits acts of horror, cruelty, and violence towards innocent, sentient, non-human animals? How can humanity advance when it does inhumane things? Where's the ethics in that? So that we may have a non-biased third party to look at monkey vivisection to decide if it is ethical or not. Please pass this resolution. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for the chance to talk. I know that some of you oppose Resolution 35, and I'm trying hard to understand exactly why. It cannot be that you don't understand the importance of the issue, because anybody who knows much about monkeys, or the experiments done on them here in the monkey experimentation capital of the world, and the similarities between people and monkeys, know that the experiments on them raise a serious ethical and moral issue. It can't be that the proposed study would take you away from other important county business, because the study would not be done by supervisors. It would be done by citizens. It can't be a matter of cost, because the study would cost almost nothing. It can't be that you expect somebody else to deal with this serious ethical and moral issue, because the state, the university, and the federal government have not dealt with it despite many decades of experiments on monkeys, and the university's self-interest would prevent a fair study anyway. It can't be that the science of experimenting on monkeys is so good that the ethical issue really doesn't matter, because there's much evidence that experimenting on monkeys in general, I'm not talking about any specific study like some people are talking about that, but in general, there's much evidence that doesn't help people much anyway. It cannot be that the treatment of monkeys is humane in the labs in Dane County, because actions such as giving them birth defects and destroying parts of their brains are simply not humane. It can't be that experimenting on monkeys is obviously ethical, because even some of the university's own bioethicists, science historians, legal scholars, and philosophers don't think that it is. And even if there have been, or will be, or might be some benefits to people from experimenting on monkeys, ethicists know that benefits alone would not justify the experiment. It can't be that you think this discussion should take place only on a national level. The university did not need a national discussion to make an ethical decision about a shoe supplier. It certainly doesn't need a national discussion to make an ethical decision about the suffering of human-like monkeys. It can't be that the proposed study would not have significant benefits, because it would. It would raise the level of discussion of this important ethical and moral issue in our community. It would engage and inform citizens. And for those of you who think that jurisdiction is a big issue, it would give state legislators who have jurisdiction over the university the courage to take action themselves. It can't be that most of your constituents oppose this resolution. Over 2,000 people have signed petitions related to it. 3 local editorial boards, a church and a neighborhood association, have called for a study. And at last week's committee meeting, as you've already heard, supporters of the resolution outnumbered opponents 5-1. People care. Citizens care. Your constituents care. It can't be that jurisdiction is the reason why some of you oppose it, because the resolution doesn't call for anything requiring jurisdiction. And because, as one of your colleagues pointed out at last week's Health and Human Needs Committee meeting, ethical issues don't have jurisdictional boundaries. If something of questionable ethics is going on in our backyard with our money and our names, we all ought to be concerned about it. So why do some of you oppose this resolution? The only possible explanations I can come up with is that there's just not enough interest in what's obviously a serious ethical and moral issue, or perhaps there's insufficient courage to deal with the issue, especially in the face of the university coming out in pretty strong force this time, trying to convince you that the public should not be interested enough to conduct a study about what goes on in its public university. I don't think these are very good reasons. So I hope you will vote for the resolution. If you're not inclined to tonight, I hope you will postpone a vote on the resolution until the other co-sponsor of the resolution on this committee, Patrick Miles, can attend a meeting and vote. I don't think it would be fair. 1 minute? Thank you. I don't think it would be fair to vote without his participation. And not allowing a vote at all on the resolution, I think, would be completely inappropriate and undemocratic, given all the public interest and 13 co-sponsors and 2 more people voting at last week's committee meeting for it. There's obvious interest in this resolution. It deserves a vote. Very briefly, many claims have been made about the science and the connection between the research and benefits to people tonight. There's not enough time by a long shot to rebut those arguments, but please know that the relation between the research and the benefits to people is by no means as clear as it's been presented here tonight. Lastly, a lot of people, when they hear benefits or somebody close to me has a serious condition, They turn off their critical ethical thinking. That's all we need to know. So we have to experiment on monkeys. It's not that simple. And the ease with which people turn off their critical ethical thinking is a good reason why we need this study.